You probably believe that intelligence protects you. It feels like armor. It gives you the ability to analyze arguments, detect inconsistencies, and dismantle weak logic before it settles into belief. Smart people don't fall for obvious nonsense. Smart people demand evidence. Smart people question assumptions. That confidence feels earned. It feels justified. But what if that very confidence is the first vulnerability? Intelligence does not merely sharpen your ability to find truth. It also sharpens your ability to defend conclusions you have already reached. The sharper the mind, the more sophisticated the defense. What begins as curiosity can quietly turn into commitment. What begins as open exploration can solidify into personal identity. And once an idea becomes part of who you are, it is no longer just something you believe. It becomes something you protect. Here lies the hidden paradox. Intelligence increases your reasoning power, but it also increases your persuasive power over yourself. You can construct elegant explanations. You can anticipate objections. You can weave facts into narratives that feel coherent and satisfying. But coherence is not the same as correctness. A beautifully structured argument can still rest on a false premise. Ignorance is loud and clumsy. It contradicts itself. It collapses under pressure. Sophisticated error is different. It sounds polished. It cites data. It feels thoughtful. It survives debate. And because it survives debate, it begins to feel true. Have you noticed how easily you can spot flawed reasoning in others, yet struggle to detect it in yourself? That asymmetry is not accidental. Intelligence magnifies it. The more skilled you are at exposing weaknesses in someone else's argument, the more skilled you become at concealing weaknesses in your own. The mind becomes both lawyer and judge, defending and approving its own conclusions. Over time, confidence accumulates. Success in academics, work, or debate reinforces the belief that your reasoning is reliable. Doubt begins to feel unnecessary. You trust your conclusions reflexively because you have been right before. But past accuracy does not guarantee present truth. Reality does not care about your reputation for intelligence. It only cares about alignment. The danger is subtle. When confronted with information that challenges your belief, your mind moves quickly. Perhaps the source is biased. Perhaps the study design was flawed. Perhaps the critic misunderstood the nuance. These objections might be valid. They often are. But they might also be shields constructed instantly to preserve comfort. The shift from inquiry to defense is seamless. It does not announce itself. It feels like rational thinking. It feels responsible. It feels rigorous. That is what makes it so difficult to detect. You are not lying to others. You are persuading yourself. Intelligence becomes most dangerous when it fuses with identity. If you see yourself as rational, independent, and thoughtful, then admitting error threatens more than a belief. It threatens your self-image. So the mind works quietly to avoid that threat. It reframes contradictions. It reinterprets evidence. It searches for supporting fragments while dismissing disruptive ones. The uncomfortable truth is this. Intelligence does not eliminate bias. It refines it. It makes it quieter, more articulate, more defensible. It transforms crude mistakes into elegant misconceptions. So the real question is not whether you are intelligent. The real question is whether your intelligence serves truth or protects you from it. Because the moment you believe you are too smart to be wrong, the process has already begun. Intelligence is often described as the ability to reason clearly. But reasoning is not a neutral tool. It can illuminate truth, or it can protect belief. The same cognitive power that helps you solve complex problems can quietly reorganize evidence to defend conclusions you are emotionally attached to. Intelligence does not automatically aim toward accuracy. It aims toward coherence, and coherence feels like truth, even when it is not. Consider confirmation bias. Most people understand it in a simple way. We look for evidence that supports what we already believe. But in highly intelligent individuals, confirmation bias becomes more sophisticated. It is no longer about ignoring obvious contradictions. It becomes about reinterpreting them. Data that challenges a belief is not dismissed outright. It is reframed, contextualized, or categorized as an exception. The belief remains intact, appearing even stronger after surviving scrutiny. This is where motivated reasoning enters. Motivated reasoning is not about stupidity. It is about desire. The desire to be right, the desire to maintain consistency, the desire to protect identity. Intelligent people are especially skilled at constructing arguments that align with these desires. They can gather selective studies, build nuanced interpretations, and generate compelling counterarguments. The result is an internally convincing structure that feels rational, even if its foundation is biased. Anchoring plays a role as well. Once an intelligent person commits to an idea, that idea becomes a reference point. Future information is evaluated relative to it. Evidence slightly aligned with the anchor feels reasonable. Evidence far from it feels extreme or flawed. The anchor quietly pulls interpretation toward itself. And because the mind is capable of generating endless justifications, the anchor remains stable, even when reality shifts. Narrative building is perhaps the most powerful mechanism of all. The intelligent mind excels at weaving stories that connect facts into meaning. Stories provide order. They reduce uncertainty. They transform scattered data into a coherent worldview. But once a narrative forms, contradictory evidence becomes disruptive. Instead of adjusting the narrative, the mind often adjusts the interpretation of the evidence. The story survives. The discomfort fades. The belief persists. Contrast this with ignorance. A poorly reasoned belief can collapse quickly under pressure, but an intelligently defended belief can survive indefinitely. It can evolve, adapt, and reframe itself in response to criticism. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to refine the argument. Each objection becomes proof that the idea has been rigorously tested. The belief gains resilience not because it is true, but because it is well defended. Social reinforcement amplifies this effect. Intelligent individuals often surround themselves with peers of similar capability. When such groups share a belief, their collective reasoning power strengthens it. They challenge each other's weak arguments and improve them. Over time, the shared belief becomes more sophisticated and more insulated from external critique. Dissenting voices are dismissed as uninformed or simplistic. The group's intelligence becomes a barrier against correction. This transformation is subtle. It does not feel like self-deception. It feels like intellectual rigor. It feels like defending standards. But the underlying motivation may have shifted. Instead of asking what is true, the question becomes how can I protect what I believe? The difference is rarely acknowledged, yet it changes everything. The intelligent mind is not immune to bias. It is equipped to refine it. It can construct elegant defenses, reinterpret challenges, and maintain coherence even when cracks appear. And because the reasoning sounds sophisticated, it feels trustworthy. That is the danger. Intelligence does not merely increase your ability to think. It increases your ability to justify. When reasoning becomes a defense mechanism rather than a discovery tool, the pursuit of truth quietly transforms into the preservation of identity. And the smarter you are, the harder it becomes to notice that shift. Intelligence does not fail loudly. It fails with confidence. Some of the most dramatic intellectual collapses in history were not caused by ignorance, but by brilliance defending the wrong idea. When we examine these moments carefully, a pattern emerges. The smarter the thinker, the more intricate the defense of the error. Consider the early 20th century resistance to continental drift. Alfred Wegener proposed that continents moved across the Earth's surface. The evidence was visible in matching coastlines and fossil patterns across oceans. Yet many of the most respected geologists of the time rejected the theory outright. They were not foolish men. They were highly trained, mathematically capable scientists, but they had invested decades in fixed continent models. Their reputations, textbooks, and careers were built upon them. Wegener's idea threatened not only a theory, but a structure of intellectual authority. The objections were detailed and sophisticated. Critics pointed out the absence of a known mechanism to move continents. They produced calculations that seemed to demonstrate impossibility. The arguments sounded decisive. For decades, continental drift was dismissed as speculative fantasy. Only later, with the discovery of plate tectonics and seafloor spreading, did the mechanism appear. The theory they resisted became foundational science. What happened? It was not a lack of intelligence. It was an excess of commitment. Once a model becomes embedded in your intellectual identity, abandoning it feels like dismantling part of yourself. So the mind does what it does best. It defends. Or consider Lord Kelvin, one of the greatest physicists of the 19th century. Kelvin calculated the age of the Earth based on cooling rates and concluded it was far younger than geologists and biologists required. His mathematics was rigorous, his reputation immense, yet his calculations rested on incomplete assumptions about heat sources within the Earth. Radioactivity had not yet been discovered. When evidence began to suggest a much older planet, Kelvin resisted. His authority amplified the resistance of others. It took years for the scientific community to fully accept the revised understanding. These were not careless thinkers. They were extraordinary minds working within the limits of available knowledge. But brilliance did not shield them from error. In some ways, it delayed correction. Their intellectual confidence, combined with social authority, created inertia. Collective intelligence can intensify this effect. When groups of brilliant individuals reinforce each other's conclusions, shared certainty becomes self-sustaining. Each member strengthens the argument, each refines the logic. External criticism is dismissed as uninformed. The more internally coherent the belief becomes, the more resistant it grows to outside challenge. Intelligence multiplied socially can form a fortress. We see similar dynamics beyond science. Financial experts before major economic collapses often defend optimistic models long after warning signs appear. Political strategists construct elaborate justifications for flawed policies. In each case, analytical sophistication does not prevent misjudgment. It rationalizes it. Status plays a role as well. When a highly intelligent person publicly commits to a position, reversal becomes costly. Reputation is at stake. Admitting error may appear as weakness. The longer the defense continues, the harder it becomes to step back. Pride intertwines with principle. Correction feels like defeat rather than progress. Contrast this with intellectual humility. A less prestigious thinker may adjust more quickly because they have less to lose. They are not defending decades of authority. They are not protecting a legacy. In this way, brilliance can create vulnerability. The higher you stand, the further you must descend to admit you are wrong. The tragedy is not that brilliant people err. Error is universal. The tragedy is that intelligence can prolong error by strengthening its defenses. Sophisticated reasoning can shield flawed assumptions for years, even decades. These historical examples reveal something unsettling. Intelligence does not merely generate insight, it generates commitment. And when commitment fuses with identity, correction becomes painful. This dynamic is not confined to laboratories or lecture halls. It lives wherever intelligent people attach their sense of self to a belief. The pattern that once shaped scientific resistance is the same pattern shaping everyday conviction. And once we recognize it in history, we must ask where it operates within us. It is easy to look at scientists and historical figures and think their errors belong to a different world. Laboratories, equations, prestigious debates. But the same mechanism operates quietly in daily life. The difference is not scale, it is visibility. Imagine an intelligent professional who believes they are in the right career path. The evidence once supported. Strong grades, early praise, a sense of momentum. Years later, dissatisfaction creeps in. The work feels misaligned. Energy drains faster than it used to. But instead of questioning the decision, the mind begins constructing defenses. Every job has difficulties. Success requires sacrifice. Leaving now would waste everything I've invested. Each statement contains partial truth. Together they form a shield. The smarter the individual, the more nuanced the shield becomes. They gather statistics about career dissatisfaction. They cite examples of successful people who endured worse. They frame doubt as weakness. Logical reasoning strengthens emotional attachment. Relationships follow the same pattern. Suppose you believe someone is trustworthy. When signs of inconsistency appear, intelligence activates. You reinterpret behavior in context. You construct explanations that preserve the original belief. They were stressed. I misunderstood. It's not a pattern. These interpretations may be generous. They may even be correct. But if they always point in one direction, protecting the belief, the pattern deserves scrutiny. Political convictions often demonstrate this most clearly. Intelligent individuals can produce detailed arguments for their positions. They can dissect opposing views with precision. Yet when confronted with credible counter-evidence, they may instinctively search for flaws in the source rather than reconsider the stance. Bias is no longer crude rejection. It becomes selective skepticism. Friendly information receives leniency. Hostile information faces interrogation. The core issue is identity. Beliefs rarely exist in isolation. They connect to self-concept. If you see yourself as rational, compassionate, independent, or principled, then certain beliefs reinforce that identity. To abandon them feels like abandoning part of yourself. So intelligence works to maintain internal consistency. The story must hold. This dynamic explains why intelligent people sometimes double down when challenged. The challenge does not feel like an invitation to explore. It feels like a threat to coherence. Reasoning shifts from discovery to stabilization. The goal becomes restoring equilibrium, not uncovering truth. Even personal habits reflect this pattern. A person who believes they are disciplined may overlook instances of procrastination, labeling them strategic breaks. Someone who sees themselves as open-minded may quietly avoid perspectives that create discomfort. Intelligence provides language to justify these inconsistencies without confronting them. Contrast this with honest doubt. Honest doubt is uncomfortable. It introduces instability. It disrupts narrative flow, but it also creates space for growth. Without it, intelligence becomes an architect of illusion, building structures that feel solid but rest on unexamined assumptions. The everyday version of the mistake is subtle because it feels responsible. It feels like careful reasoning. But when every conclusion preserves the same identity, when every reinterpretation protects the same belief, the pattern mirrors the historical errors of brilliant minds. The setting changes. The psychology does not. The real danger is not believing something wrong. It is believing that your intelligence guarantees you would notice if you did. If intelligence alone cannot protect you, then what can? The answer is not less thinking. It is a different posture toward thinking. Intellectual humility is not weakness. It is disciplined awareness of your own fallibility. It is the recognition that your reasoning ability, however strong, operates inside a mind shaped by desire, identity, and fear. Humility begins with separating belief from self. An idea is not your character. A position is not your worth. When you loosen that attachment, disagreement becomes less threatening. You can examine contrary evidence without feeling diminished. The goal shifts from defending a narrative to refining it. This requires deliberate practice. Seek disconfirming evidence as actively as confirming evidence. When you encounter criticism, resist the immediate impulse to counter. Ask whether you would apply the same scrutiny if the information supported your view. Write down your predictions before evaluating outcomes, so memory cannot quietly rewrite the past. Cultivate environments where disagreement is safe. Surround yourself with people who value truth over comfort. The discomfort you feel when challenged is not a signal to retreat. It is a signal that something meaningful is being tested. Most importantly, embrace provisional thinking. Hold conclusions firmly enough to act, but lightly enough to revise. Certainty feels powerful, but curiosity is more durable. When you accept that being wrong is not a failure but a correction, you reduce the cost of adjustment. The paradox resolves here. Intelligence is a tool. Humility is its guidance system. Without guidance, intelligence can construct elegant illusions. With humility, it becomes a mechanism for alignment. The real measure of a sharp mind is not how convincingly it defends a belief, but how gracefully it releases one when evidence demands it.